Hi there. Thanks for tuning in to Caritas Quaerens. In this video series, we're going to take a look at some of the commonly asked questions about Christian universalism or apokatastasis, the doctrine that all people will eventually get to heaven. Before I jump into that, though, I wanted to address, I guess I would call it a concern that I have. It's not so much a commonly asked question as it is just sort of a principle, I guess, that I wanted to address before we get into the series of questions. So here's what it is. I've read quite a few books already about Christian universalism, lots of articles, lots of videos. So I would say I'm fairly well versed, and I've done quite a bit of research in the topic. And one of the things that I find very startling is that I would say probably like at least 75% of what I read, it seems like Christian universalism always kind of has to take the defensive. I guess you might say that one of the obvious exceptions to that is the book by David Bentley Hart, That All Shall Be Saved, where Dr. Hart has no issue going right for the throat, so to speak, metaphorically speaking, against infernalism. But that is definitely an exception. And I mean, I get it. I haven't looked at any statistics, but I would bet that, probably the vast majority, maybe 90% of Christian believers accept some kind of belief in an endless suffering in hell. So that, I'm willing to admit that probably the infernalist position is held by the vast majority. And being the majority position, I get it, that's kind of becomes the default. And so if you are going to accept Christian universalism, then just from the circumstances, you have to kind of argue from that perspective. So I get it. But all I'm saying is, when Christian universalism is always on the defense, it kind of makes it look like there's something wrong. If you always have to be explaining why your position makes sense, and you always have to be basically just giving an explanation for the legitimacy of what you believe, well then, it can lead people to think, maybe it's not really a very tenable position, because all they ever do is just explain why this verse in the Bible, in the gospel, can make sense in a universalist perspective, and why, this church father saying this doesn't contradict it, and so on. Anyway, all I'm saying is, realistically, I think, and I think a lot of other people would admit this too if they're really honest, I think that if you look at the Bible, for instance, there are plenty of passages that are problematic from an infernalist perspective as well. There are plenty of areas of philosophy, church history, or the history of doctrine, just common sense that really pose problems for the infernalist position. So what I would like to see is, maybe like a commonly asked questions against infernalism as well. Maybe I'll do that after I do this series about commonly asked questions about universalism. But I would really like, people to consider those questions as well. And I think, especially because I think it would be really good for genuine dialogue, not only between universalists and infernalists, but even just amongst universalists. It can be very helpful to see where people of opposing opinions, where they're coming from, and the things that they have to argue through. So anyway, just throwing that out there. I'm not saying like, oh, it's unfair, people who think that universalism is true, it's not fair for us, or boo-hoo. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. Just want to kind of raise that point and mention that in this series that I'm going to be doing about commonly asked questions about universalism, I'm not doing this as a defense. I'm doing this more as, I guess, just trying to look at the issues and trying to look at them as in as unbiased a way as I can, and try to look at them, just with honest Christian eyes, if that makes sense. So anyway, if you are interested in this at all, please like the video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment below. What questions do you have? Or what are some issues in infernalism that you think ought to be addressed or ought to be dialogued about? Leave your insights below. Until next time, adios.